Would you believe me if I told you that your brain would rather stay in the familiar pain of grief than step into a peace that it doesn't recognize? I remember the first time I laughed out loud after losing Quentin, and I immediately felt a sting of pain because I felt like I was betraying him. Our human minds are built on patterns and predictability, so our minds would rather cling to what's familiar, even if it's painful, instead of stepping into unknown health and healing. Hey there, I'm Kelly Nielsen, and after going through my own deep grief twice in my life, I created a faith-based, neuroscience-informed process to help our minds and bodies recover from the pain of loss. So let's dive into today's topic. We're going to be talking about what happens to our brain and why our brain craves predictability, even if it's painful. And we're going to talk about some neuroscience tactics on how to interrupt that loop and slowly and consistently introduce healing and hope. All right, let's dive in. Okay, so unresolved grief, when you're grieving someone and the pain is insurmountable and you stay stuck in that place for a long time, that isn't about love or loyalty to that person. That is literally about your brain becoming addicted to the pattern of the pain. Again, our brains love patterns and it loves predictability. And so part of the reason why grief is so upsetting in the first place is that someone who was in our life, a very big fixture in our life, is no longer physically there. So your brain is scrambling, trying to solve this mathematical equation that can't be solved, right? They're looking for your person everywhere it looks. And so it's upset and upset and upset. And once you do that long enough, your brain becomes accustomed to the pain of the loss. The pain becomes the familiar place that your brain goes all too easily. You become comfortable in the pain, even though it's an uncomfortable place to be. It becomes familiar for your brain. And so your brain will go back there and go back there every time. So healing from pain, the pain of loss, doesn't dishonor the past. What it does is open up our possibilities for the future. And teaching your brain to separate those two things is a vital, vital key for how to move forward from the loss, okay? But the second thing is this grief loop, why it feels so impossible to move on. So I remember again when Quentin first passed away, the thought that invaded and permeated my mind was the fact that he's gone. That's all I kept hearing everywhere. He's gone. I would look at my phone and see that he hadn't called. He's gone. Someone would send me a message of condolence. He's gone, right? I would look at my couch and see that he's not there. Like everything around me, everything in my environment just screamed back at me, he's gone. Every piece of data that I saw, every conversation I had, everything I saw on TV, it just all was screaming back at me that he's gone. That is the thought that my brain became addicted to. That's the thought that my brain could not get rid of. It was the thought that permeated every single thing that I did throughout the day. And so what I had to do was give my brain a new thought. We literally have to slowly and consistently introduce a new thought so that our brain can learn a new pattern. Again, like our brain doesn't distinguish even what is good or what is bad. Our brain only operates on patterns. And so if you're doing the unhealthy thing over and over again, your brain is going to become comfortable with that. That becomes the known pattern. And the same is true with grief and loss. When we meditate on the fact that our person's gone and we think about that, that becomes the familiar pattern. So we have to teach our brain a new thought. We literally have to instruct our brain on how to process this thing that is loss. So, and if you've watched any of my other videos, you'll know that the thought that I introduced and that I trained my brain to meditate on is my son's not gone. He's just not here. I will see him again one day and we'll have all of eternity to spend together. Now, here's the part that I need you to hear. It doesn't happen instantaneously. If you think about right after the loss happened, if you could try to quantify the number of thoughts that you had about the fact that they're gone, right? And that pattern has been firmly established in your brain. So in order to replace it, we're going to have at least as many thoughts with the new thought and more in order to create a new thought pattern. This is where a lot of people lose it because they'll start thinking a new thought, but their feelings stay the same. They'll start thinking a new thought, but that old thought is still there and significantly louder than the new thought, right? It's like a scale. Your scale is heavily tipped this way. You have to feed it enough of this information before it'll be even and eventually tip this way. But it will happen because this is literally how our brains are wired. It's wired for familiarity and patterns. So once we establish a strong enough pattern, once we do it long enough, the scale will tip in the favor of the healing thought. But oh my goodness, in that time in the middle, that's when everything's won and lost, right? Because your feelings are in alignment with this thought. This thought is going to seem louder. It's going to seem realer. It's going to seem more true. It's going to seem all those things until you can work on this thought long enough to tip it over, and this thought will become the predominant thought. Now, the good news is once this thought becomes the predominant thought, you will be filtering any new information in through this thought. So for example, if the thought that we replace it with is, I'm learning how to recover every day, or I'm growing in my recovery every day, or I'm growing in my sense of joy and happiness every day. Once that becomes firmly established, all the information that you see is going to be filtered through that thought. So when you look at your phone, you're not going to see that your person didn't call. You're going to see comforting texts and supportive messages from people in your life right now. You're going to see people that you can go grab a coffee with or go for a walk. Like your brain is literally going to interpret that piece of data differently. Your lens effectively has been changed at that point. And that's when not only can you begin healing, but the healing becomes accelerated, and you're going to have more energy. You're going to have more vitality. You're going to have a better outlook on life. But please stay with me in the middle. It's in the middle when things are won and lost. Now, I also want to talk about, so how do we change our thoughts about loss without losing the person, right? Because we want to remember our person. We want to think of those memories. But before we train our brain how to deal with it, when you think of those memories, you're instantly going to think of that they're not here anymore and that you're missing out. And the pain associated with that is going to come through. And so a lot of people are afraid to move forward because they think it means they can never think about their person again, right? That we're like somehow shutting them out of our brain altogether. We're not shutting out the memories. We're not shutting out the information about our loved ones. What we're doing is training our brain how to process and interpret those memories so that the pain associated is no longer there. And this is absolutely possible and doable. I remember when I started to have these like moments of light and peace, at first it felt so foreign. It felt so uncomfortable. It felt weird and awkward to feel light or to feel happy or to feel joy. Not only did it feel uncomfortable and awkward, but it also, like I said, felt like a betrayal. So I had to learn and I had to train my brain how to hold Quentin in those pockets of joy, how to bring the memory of Quentin into the light, how to bring all the best of our times together and who he is and was as a person and what he contributed to my life. I had to bring those with me into those moments of joy and peace and light and laughter so that they could coexist, right? I think a lot of people they think we need to just leave our person in the past and never think about them. That's the only way we're going to be happy here. But no, the truth is we can absolutely bring our person with us and bring them into the happy moments, the joyful moments, the playful moments. That's what it looks like to have them coexist with you in your present and in your future. We absolutely don't have to leave anybody behind, but it's these myths and these misconceptions that keep people either stuck in pain and not moving forward, or they move forward because they just shut off that part of themselves. They just train their brain to never think about their person, never talk about it, because they figure out a way to live without those worlds colliding. But my friends, like that's not health and healing either, right? So what we're aiming for is a place where we remember our person. We talk about our person. Our person is woven into our life and, the milestones and anniversaries and all those things. We're not shying away from them or pretending they didn't happen, they didn't exist. No, what we're doing is weaving them into our current life. We're bringing our loved one along with us so that it's integration, right? So that we're living and enjoying our present moment exactly as it is, and they are with us in the process. If all of this sounds interesting, appealing, or maybe like a little woo-woo, like Kelly, you're giving me all these tips, but I still am unsure what this practically looks like. I encourage you to check out the link in the description to connect with me if you want some further help. But I hope that you take some time to give yourself and your brain permission. Say it out loud. Say out loud that loving your person doesn't equal suffering, right? That walking and healing does not mean forgetting your person. Walking and healing absolutely can include the love and joy that you have, the emotions that you have for your loved one. It's another kind of hack for your brain. The things that you say out loud become almost mathematical equations that your brain works to solve and works to find information to support. So you can literally instruct your brain on how you want to process this loss. And if you do it consistently, your brain will follow and pay attention. I hope this video blessed you. If you want more information about additional neuroscience hacks, check out the next video.